The unexpected voice began with a strange phone call. On a rainy Monday morning in Silicon Valley, Sundar Pichai sat alone in his office, the light from his laptop screen flickering against the glass walls. Despite the power he held as the CEO of one of the most powerful tech companies in the world, today he felt ... off. Something deep in his chest itched, not pain, but a quiet restlessness. He often felt it when he thought of home, not the towering office or his Mountain View mansion, but real home. India. The dusty lanes of Chennai, cramped apartment filled with the smell of cardamom and curry leaves. The tiny fan that buzzed through long, hot summers, and her name was Lakshmi, the woman who raised him when his parents were away working long hours. She wasn't related by blood, but to Sundar, she was everything. A nanny, yes, but also a mother when his mother couldn't be. A storyteller, a protector, a quiet force that shaped the boy he once was. Years passed, careers happened, cities changed, and Lakshmi faded into the background of memory. She never used the internet, didn't have a phone. She was as his mother. Used to say, old school, in the most stubborn way. But that morning, as the storm whispered against his window, his assistant rushed in, flustered and pale. "Sundar," she said, voice trembling, You need to hear this voicemail." Sundar raised an eyebrow. "A voicemail?" he repeated, confused. "Yes, from a woman," she said. "She said her name is Lakshmi. She called from a borrowed number. She's in Chennai." His heart stopped for a second. The name, old and familiar, hit him like the first breath after being underwater. The assistant pressed play. The voice was softer now, raspier, but it was her. "Hello, Beta," she said, calling him the way she used to when he scraped his knees or cried over broken toys. "I don't know if this will reach you. I don't know if you remember me. I'm still alive, you know. 85 now, I still work. Someone's got to sweep these floors, clean these windows. Just wanted to say, I'm proud of you, always was." It was a pause, a faint cough. "Okay, that's all. Don't worry about me. Take care of yourself. Don't forget to eat your fruits." Click, the line went dead. Sundar sat in silence, his breath caught between disbelief and heartbreak. She was still alive, still working, sweeping floors at 85. How? Why? She had disappeared from his world decades ago, and now, out of nowhere. Her voice returned like a ghost in the storm. He stood up suddenly, nearly knocking over his coffee. "Get me a flight," he said, urgency surging through his veins. "To Chennai. Soon as possible," his assistant blinked. "But sir, the quarterly meeting, cancel it. Delay it, I don't care. Just get me on that plane." So began the journey. Not just through airports and across continents, but into the past, into forgotten promises and buried emotions. He wasn't just going to see an old woman. He was chasing a part of himself he had lost in the noise of success. As the plane took off, Sundar stared out the window, watching the clouds roll past like memories. He thought of the first time Lakshmi held his hand, guiding him through a crowded market, how she used to sneak him sweets when his mother wasn't looking, how she stayed up all night with him when he had a fever, singing old Tamil lullabies until the morning light. But something bothered him. Why hadn't anyone told him she was still alive? Why had she never reached out before? More importantly, why? Was she still working? The answers would not be simple. When the plane landed in Chennai, the air hit him like a wall of nostalgia. Hot, thick, and filled with scents of home diesel fumes, spicy food, and something uniquely Indian he couldn't describe. The city had changed. Malls had risen, traffic had worsened, but some things remained eternal. The chaos, the warmth, and somewhere in the heart of it all, Lakshmi. He didn't go to a hotel. He asked the driver to take him to the old neighborhood where he grew up. It was late evening when they arrived. Kids played cricket in the street. A cow wandered lazily across the road. Contis gossiped from balconies. In there, sweeping the steps of an ancient apartment building, was a small, frail woman in a faded green sari. Her back was bent. Her movements slow but precise. Her hair, once jet black, was now a river of silver. Sundar stepped out of the car, unsure of what to say, unsure if she would even recognize him. Then she looked up. Her eyes, small and clouded by age, widened as she dropped her broom. "Beta," she whispered. He nodded, his throat tight with emotion. She stumbled forward, then stopped, as if afraid this was a dream. "You came," she said, voice trembling. "Of course I came," Sundar whispered, walking toward her. "My family." She touched his face gently, as if trying to make sure he was real. Tears streamed down her cheeks. "You didn't forget," she said. "Never," he replied. They sat on the building steps, ignoring the curious stares of passers-by. She offered him a piece of jaggery from her little pouch, just like she used to. He took it, smiling, but the smile faded quickly. "Why are you still working?" he asked softly. She laughed a thin, bitter sound. "What else should I do? I have no one, no pension, no family left. The government doesn't care about old women who wiped children's noses for a living. People like me, we just survive." Sundar felt like someone had punched him in the chest. "You don't have to do this anymore," he said. "Come with me. You'll live with me. I'll take care of everything." But her smile faded. "No, Beta, I can't. Not yet." "Why not?" She looked away. "Because there's something I need to do first. Something I've waited 50 years for." Sundar stared at her, confused. "What is it?" She didn't answer. Instead, she stood slowly and picked up her broom. "Tomorrow," she said, "I'll tell you. But first, you have to come with me. There's someone you need to meet." The wind picked up then, blowing dust through the narrow street. Sundar watched her shuffle down the path, his mind spinning with questions. Who did she want him to meet? What secret had she been carrying all these years? And why was there a hint of fear in her eyes? He didn't know it yet, but this was only the beginning. What he would discover next would shake everything he thought he knew, not just about her, but about his own life, and nothing would ever be the same again. The letter in the shoebox next morning in Chennai began with sounds Sundar hadn't heard in years, temple bells echoing faintly in the distance. The crackle of newspaper carts, the high-pitched call of a chai seller, and the distant bark of street dogs battling over territory. It wasn't quiet, but it was a familiar kind of noise. It's almost like a lullaby from childhood that had never truly stopped playing. Sundar stood on the apartment balcony where Lakshmi lived in a single-room tenement, watching the sunrise fight through a maze of tangled wires and rusted rooftops. Last night, she had refused to speak more about the person he needed to meet. "Not now," she had said, gently placing a steel plate of lemon rice in front of him. "First you eat, tomorrow we go." He hadn't pressed her. There was something in her eyes, a calm stubbornness that made him feel like a little boy again, asking questions she wasn't ready to answer. Now, as the city stirred beneath him, he tried to prepare himself. He didn't know what he was about to walk into, but he knew one thing. Lakshmi had waited too long for something. And secrets that live in silence for 50 years don't stay gentle when they finally come out. Lakshmi appeared in the doorway. "Shh," her sari neatly pleated, her eyes alert but tired. She handed him a folded piece of paper with a scribbled address. "This is where we're going," she said. "But on the way we must stop somewhere else. Your old home." Sundar blinked. "But it's gone, isn't it? Sold years ago." "Yes," she replied, tying her sandals. "But not everything inside it was taken. Some things waited." The walk through the neighborhood was like walking through a faded photograph. Every turn sparked a memory. The broken corner of a building where he scraped his knee, the old mango tree that shaded his childhood summers, the pani puri vendor who had aged twice as fast as everyone else. Everything had changed, yet nothing truly had. When they reached the house, Sundar was surprised to find it still standing, albeit crooked and weary. The gate creaked open with a groan, and Lakshmi walked ahead, her feet familiar with the cracks in the stone path. The back door pulled out a tiny rusted key from her blouse and handed it to him. "It's in your old room," she said, "under the floorboard." Sundar opened the door slowly, dust swirling like spirits in the air. The smell of old wood and forgotten years hit him hard. The room was smaller than he remembered. But isn't that always the way with childhood places? They shrink when you return as an adult. But the wall still had the faint drawing of a rocket he had sketched as a child. And the corner where he used to line up his toy cars still bore the scratch marks from racing crashes. He knelt and pulled at the floorboard beneath the tiny desk. It came up with a pop, revealing a dusty old shoebox wrapped in a thin plastic sheet. He lifted it gently, hands trembling slightly. Inside, he found layers of old photographs, some of his parents. Some of him as a child, some of Lakshmi holding him as a baby. But beneath those was something else. A letter. The envelope was yellowed, but the handwriting was unmistakably hers. He opened it, slowly, carefully, as if afraid the paper might crumble. The words inside were simple but strange. My Sundar, if you ever find this, it means you came back. Maybe not for me, maybe for something else, but you came. I've waited a long time for this. I did something long ago that I never forgave myself. 4. Someone paid a price for a mistake that was partly mine. I should have spoken up, but I stayed quiet. Now you must meet him. His name is Arun. He is not your blood. But in a way, he is your brother. Ask me no more through this letter. The rest, I will show you myself. Always yours. Lakshmi's room spun slightly. Sundar sat back, stunned. Arun, brother? Mistake? The letter gave nothing and everything at once. He looked at Lakshmi, who stood silently in the doorway, watching. Who? Is Arun? He asked. Someone who was left behind, she replied. And someone who might not forgive me, or you. The ride to Arun's address was silent. Sundar's mind raced, trying to make sense of what the letter hinted at. Had Lakshmi raised another child? Is there some lost family secret buried under? All these years. Why now? Why reveal it like this? They reached a quiet street on the outskirts of the city. The houses here were humble but clean, lined with flower pots and drying laundry. Lakshmi pointed to a small blue home with a tin roof. He lives there, she said, then paused. But I cannot go in. Not yet. He does not know I am here. Sundar's confusion deepened. Then how am I supposed to, you go, she said softly. Tell him your name. And when he looks confused, say this: the mango tree still leans toward the sun. He will understand. The line felt like a riddle, but Sundar didn't argue. He walked to the door, heart pounding louder with each step. Footsteps approached, then stopped. The door opened. A man in his early 50s stood before him. Lean, with salt and pepper hair, eyes sharp and tired. His face was not familiar, but there was something in his gaze, an echo of something Sundar. Couldn't name, yes? The man asked. My name is Sundar, he began, unsure. Sundar Pichai. The man raised an eyebrow. Then Sundar added, the mango tree still leans toward the sun. The reaction was immediate. The man stepped back, his face draining of color. Who told you that? He whispered. Lakshmi, Sundar replied. The man looked past him, scanning the street. Is she here? He asked. Yes, Sundar said. But she said she couldn't come in. Arun closed the door halfway, then leaned against the frame, as if his knees had weakened. I told myself I would never forgive her, he muttered. But she waited. She remembered the phrase. Kept it. Sundar waited silently. The moment felt too large to interrupt. Finally, Arun opened the door fully. Come in, he said. You have questions, and I have answers. But first, there's something you need to see. Inside the modest home, the walls were filled with books and faded photos. Arun led him to a small drawer and pulled out another envelope. He handed it to Sundar. This, he said, was meant for you. But she couldn't send it. She wrote it after your family moved away. She asked me to hold on to it until now, I suppose. Sundar opened the second letter, his hands trembling. My dear Sundar, I kept a secret from you. One I shouldn't have. I was once a mother before I was your nanny. I had a son. But I was too poor, too desperate. I had no one. I left him with a family I thought would care for him. But they didn't. They used him, abandoned him, tried to find him later, but he was gone. I thought I lost him forever. Then one day I saw him again, working in a railway station. He didn't recognize me. I didn't speak. I was afraid. I stayed close, watched from afar. And when I found your family, I took the job not just for money, but because you reminded me of him. I told myself I would make it right by being the best I could be for you, but that wasn't enough. I know that now. His name is Arun. He is my son. And he deserves to know the truth. I hope one day you both can forgive me. With all my love, Lakshmi. When Sundar finished reading, his face was pale. He looked up at Arun, who sat quietly, watching him with a mix of sorrow and curiosity. You didn't know either? Sundar asked. Arun shook his head. Not until I got that first letter. I spent years wondering why she left, then decades, wondering why she never came back. I thought I meant nothing. Ow. I don't know what to feel. I don't either, Sundar admitted. They sat in silence, the air between them heavy with the weight of 2 lifetimes. Outside, the wind began to rise, scattering leaves across the dusty street. Lakshmi waited at the corner, still and small, holding her broom like a staff. Arun stood suddenly. Let's go to her. Are you sure? Sundar asked. Oz. We're wet, but his voice was steady. No, but I think I need to. As the 2 men walked together toward the waiting figure, neither of them noticed the shadow that watched them from the alley nearby. A thin man in dark clothes, face partially hidden, eyes locked on Lakshmi with something far colder than recognition. What none of them knew was that the truth was only half out. And what came next would shake all 3 to the core. Shadows from the past streets were quieter now. The evening sun bled a tired orange across Chennai's skyline, casting long shadows between the buildings, as if the city itself had stretched too far and now sagged beneath the weight of old memories. Sundar walked beside Arun in silence, each step toward Lakshmi layered with questions neither man could bring themselves to ask. The silence wasn't awkward, it was dense. Like the silence between verses in a sacred song, thick with meaning, heavy with hesitation. Lakshmi stood at the corner, her back to them. She didn't turn when she heard their footsteps. She didn't need to. Her body tensed slightly, her hand tightening around the handle of the broom that had become more a part of her identity than her own name. Sundar noticed at how she stood, like someone preparing to take a blow that might never come. Not fearfully, but ready if it did. Amma, Arun said, the word foreign in his mouth after so many years of not using it. His voice cracked not dramatically, not like in films, but in that quiet, painful way that comes from swallowing emotions for so long you forget how they're supposed to come out. Lakshmi turned. Her eyes met his. And in that split second, something cracked open between them. It wasn't forgiveness yet. It wasn't even recognition in the full sense. It was something deeper, something more primal. It was the silent scream of a mother who had lost her child, and the exhausted gaze of a son who had walked through life. Without the map of her love, she opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. Arun stepped closer, his hands clenched. Why? He asked, and that one word held decades of storms. Why didn't you come back? It clattered against the pavement like a final punctuation mark. I was afraid, she said. I thought you'd hate me. I did, Arun replied. For years, but not anymore. I wanted to know if you ever thought of me. Every day, she whispered. That was all it took. It's not for forgiveness, but for the wall between them to show its first crack. Sundar stood back. He's not speaking, not moving, only watching. In that moment, he felt like a child again watching 2 adults in a conversation too big for him to understand. But something inside him shifted. The woman who had carried his pain all those years had carried another pain, far older, far heavier. She had been a mother twice, but allowed herself to mourn only once, just as Lakshmi reached for Arun's hand. Just as the air softened around them, a voice cut through the moment like a blade. You always did know how to make a scene. All three turned toward the alley. A man stepped out from the shadow, his clothes dark, his face thin and weathered, like stone that had been carved by bitter wind. He wore a cruel smile, one that didn't reach his eyes. His presence chilled. The warm air? Lakshmi froze. "Mahadevan," she said, her voice barely above a breath. Sundar looked at her. Her face had drained of color. True fear sat on her like a second skin. Arun stepped protectively in front of her. "Who is he?" Sundar asked, confused, heart suddenly racing. Lakshmi didn't answer immediately. Her lips moved, but no sound came. Mahadevan laughed softly. "You didn't tell them?" he said. "After all these years, still hiding the truth, Lakshmi? Still pretending the past was something you could bury under floorboards and letters?" Arun's fists clenched. "Speak," he demanded. "Who is this man?" Mahadevan tilted his head. Mockingly, "Ask her, boy. Ask your mother who I am, and why she owes me." Lakshmi took a trembling step forward. "Don't listen to him," she said quickly. He's from before, from long ago." Mahadevan hissed, "Or I will." Sundar looked between them, trying to piece together the puzzle. That had suddenly grown thorns. Mahadevan stepped closer. "She worked for me," said, "back when you were still learning to walk. She owed me money, borrowed to feed her son, to pay for his medicine when he was sick. But when she couldn't repay, she ran, vanished into some rich man's house, hiding behind diapers and lullabies, left me with nothing." Lakshmi's voice cracked. "You exploited people. I worked 18 hours a day, and still it was never enough. You kept increasing the interest. It was never meant to be repaid, was it? Only meant to trap." "Business is business," he sneered. "But here's the thing. You still owe me." Sundar stepped forward now, his calm no longer passive. His voice was cold and steady. "You come here, after all these years, to claim a debt from an 85-year-old woman? You're wasting your breath." Mahadevan turned to Sundar, chuckling darkly. "You think money changes everything? You think your Silicon Valley smile scares me? I don't want her money anymore. I want what she stole." "She stole nothing," Sundar said. "She survived." Mahadevan's eyes gleamed. "We'll see, because if she doesn't pay, I'll make sure her story becomes the kind that breaks headlines." "You don't scare us," Arun said, stepping forward. But Mahadevan smiled wider. "Maybe not you. But maybe you should ask your new brother here how much he's willing to risk. The world loves a scandal, and I've got photos, letters, things that might just complicate a few reputations." He turned and walked away, whistling an old lullaby. In the most mocking tone possible, the silence that followed his exit was louder than any scream. Sundar looked at Lakshmi. "Is any of that true?" She nodded slowly, painfully. "Not the way he told it," she whispered. "But yes, I took money from him. Thought I could repay it. But when the interest kept growing, I ran, and I never looked back." Arun sat down on the pavement, head in his hands. "This man," he muttered. If he goes to the media, Sundar's mind was already spinning. His entire brand rested on integrity, simplicity, humility. He didn't fear scandal for himself, but he feared what it would do to Lakshmi, to Arun, to the story they were just beginning to write together. "We have to find out what he has," Sundar said. "If he's bluffing, we end it. If he's not, we control the story before he does." Lakshmi looked at him with tear-filled eyes. "I never wanted to drag you into this," she whispered. He knelt beside her, took her hand. "You didn't drag me," he said. "You raised me. Let me protect you." A tear slipped down her cheek, not of sadness, but of something else. Something like hope. Something that had been buried for too long. Behind them, the city carried on as if nothing had happened. Traffic roared. Birds flew past laundry lines. Someone cursed loudly over a cricket match. Life, indifferent as ever. But for the three of them, everything had changed. And what none of them knew was that Mahadevan wasn't done. He'd already sent the first photo to a journalist, and a message to someone even more dangerous. The weight of Silent's theft photo landed in the inbox of a local freelance journalist named Kavitha. Tucked between spam about discounted washing machines and an unopened email from her landlord about overdue rent. At first, she didn't notice. She was stirring instant coffee with one hand, scrolling with the other, eyes bleary from a sleepless night. But the subject line caught her attention. The CEO's forgotten family. She almost rolled her eyes. Another clickbait attempt? Some wild conspiracy about secret children or long-lost cousins? But curiosity has teeth. And Kavitha, despite her exhaustion, still had that bite. She opened the photo. It showed Sundar Pichai, unmistakable in a plain kurta, kneeling beside an elderly woman on a cracked Chennai pavement. Behind them stood a man whose posture looked like he had been waiting for years just to exhale. There was nothing scandalous in the photo, nothing illegal, but there was something raw, something human. And that, in journalism, was sometimes the most dangerous thing of all. Beneath the image was a message. This is just the beginning. Call me if you want the real story. No number. No signature. Just a seed of something dangerous, planted in her inbox, daring her to water it. Meanwhile, Sundar sat in a modest tea stall, sipping chai that tasted like it had been brewed with secrets. Lakshmi sat across from him, hand shaking slightly as she tried to peel a banana. Arun stood nearby, pacing, his mind clearly sprinting laps he couldn't slow down. He's bluffing, Arun muttered. He has no real proof, just words and threats. Maybe, Sundar said, but we can't afford to assume that. Lakshmi didn't speak. Her eyes were somewhere far away, locked in a memory only she could see. Amma, Arun said softly. Is there anything else? Anything you didn't tell us? She hesitated, the silence stretched. Then, barely above a whisper, she said, There's a ledger. Arun frowned. What ledger? Lakshmi set the banana down, untouched. Grew steadier, like a dam finally cracking, just enough to let the water through. When I worked for Mahadevan, I kept records. Not just of what I owed him, but of what I saw, what he did. The girls he brought in, the bribes he gave, the families he crushed with loans they could never repay. I wrote it all down, because I thought maybe one day someone would listen. Where is it now? Sundar asked, leaning forward. Lakshmi stared at him. I hid it. In the old temple on Jawahar Street, behind the statue of the broken lion, wrapped in oilcloth. No one ever checks there. They stopped worshipping after the floods. Sundar stood immediately. We go now. Wait, Arun said. What if he's watching us? What if this is a trap? Then we spring it, Sundar replied. But we don't wait. What they didn't know was that Mahadevan wasn't watching them, not directly. He was already a step ahead, waiting at the temple. Not to protect the ledger, but to burn it. When they reached Jawahar Street, the temple stood crooked, half swallowed by weeds. The broken lion statue stared down at them like a blind sentry, its mouth cracked open as if mid-scream. Arun and Sundar stepped cautiously inside, while Lakshmi remained outside, gripping her shawl tightly inside. The air was thick with damp earth and forgotten incense. Their Sundar pointed behind the statue. They pried open the panel. Behind the lion, dust falling in thick clumps, wrapped in plastic, covered in cobwebs and ash, was the ledger. Sundar reached for a hand, then came the sound. A click. They froze. Don't move, came the voice. Mahadevan stepped into the light, holding an old revolver, rusty but real. The kind of weapon that didn't need to be pretty to be deadly. Behind him stood another man, younger, holding a jerry can. Step away from the ledger, Mahadevan said. What do you want? Sundar asked, eyes never leaving the barrel. What? I'm owed, Mahadevan snapped. Not money. Silence. You take that ledger and the whole world sees who I was. Who I am? But if it burns, the story dies here. Just 3 people and a book no one will miss. Arun's hands balled into fists. This isn't just about you. There are names in there, aren't there? People you hurt, families you broke, collateral. Mahadevan said coldly, This is India. Everyone has dirt. Some of us just bury it better. Sundar stepped forward, slow and deliberate. You're right, he said. This book could destroy you, or it could be forgotten. If you walk away now, we don't go to the police. We don't go to the press. Mahadevan laughed. You make a good liar, Sundar, but you're not. You're too soft. And he poured the fuel. The stench filled the room. One spark, he said, striking a match. And this place becomes a memory. Lakshmi's voice cut through the air then, sharp as glass. Wait. Mahadevan turned. She stepped forward, trembling but fierce. Take me instead, she said. Burn the book. Fine. But let them go. I'll go wherever you want. I'll sign whatever paper you bring. Just don't hurt them. The match flickered. Mahadevan stared at her, and for the first time, he hesitated. In that split second, Arun lunged. The match dropped, but Sundar kicked it away, sparks flying into a pile of dust but not catching. Arun tackled the younger man, with the jerry can sending him crashing into the wall. Ow! The revolver clattered to the ground. Sundar grabbed the ledger and backed away, heart pounding so loud he could hear it in his teeth. Mahadevan scrambled up, fury in his eyes. But the sirens were already in the distance. Someone had called. Maybe a shopkeeper. Maybe the gods. He ran they. Didn't follow. Outside, Lakshmi collapsed to her knees, weeping, not out of fear but out of sheer, uncontrollable relief. Sundar held the ledger tightly. Arun stood beside him, breathing hard. It's not over, Sundar said. But now we have the truth. Lakshmi looked up at him, her face streaked with dirt and tears. What will you do? She asked. Sundar looked down at the battered old book. We let the world see, he said. But we tell the story our way. As he said it, Kavitha the journalist opened a second email. This one didn't come from Mon. It came from Sundar himself. You want the real story? Meet me. Tomorrow, bring your pen. The World Listensen, a quiet cafe tucked between a tailor shop and a used bookstore in Nungambakkam. The world changed. Not all at once, and not loudly. The world never changes like that. Not really. Sometimes it just exhales, looks up from its phone and notices that something small, something hidden has shifted. Like when a locked door creaks open in the middle of a sentence. And no one knows yet whether to be afraid or relieved. Kavitha arrived first. She wore a plain salwar and carried 2 notebooks. One for facts and one for thoughts, because she knew the difference, and that both mattered. She looked around the cafe, unsure of what to expect. Then Sundar walked in, alone. No entourage. Just a man in a pale blue shirt and old leather sandals, looking for all the world like someone who might be tutoring physics in the evenings. Instead of running a tech empire, he sat down across from her. No handshakes, just a nod. Quiet understanding. I'm not here to protect my image, he said before she could speak. I'm here to tell a story, hers and his, and maybe even mine. Kavitha opened her notebook. I'm listening. Meanwhile, across the city, Lakshmi sat by the window of Arun's house. The street outside buzzed with afternoon life, children chasing a punctured football. The occasional cow ambling past like it owned the road, and the comforting clatter of a vegetable cart rolling by. She didn't speak much that day. Her voice had grown tired, and not just from age. It was the exhaustion that comes when truth is finally allowed out of its cage. Her hands held a cup of warm Jira water, but she wasn't drinking it. She was watching the sky, as if waiting for it to change color. Arun was on the phone. Calls had been non-stop since the night at the temple. Police statements, legal advice, few journalists sniffing around with sharp voices and dull intentions. He'd told them all the same thing, wait for tomorrow. Because tomorrow, everything would be on the record. Back in the cafe, Sundar pulled the old ledger from his bag. It looked out of place on the polished wooden table, like a ghost refusing to be forgotten. He opened it carefully, the pages fragile but furious with meaning. These are names, he said. Victims, places, dates, everything Mahadevan tried to hide. Will he retaliate? Kavitha asked. Probably, Sundar replied. But we're not backing down? He handed her a copy of a typed document. It was a statement his official account matched with details from the ledger. It named names, described schemes, exposed bribes, and it also included something else. A confession. His voice lowered as he explained. Lakshmi isn't just a former nanny. She's the person who taught me what kindness looks like, and I let her disappear. Not on purpose, but through inattention. I let time swallow her story. Now I want to give it back. Kavitha looked up, surprised. You're admitting all this? Publicly? Yes. You understand that people will question your motives. Let them, he said. This isn't about me anymore. And just like that, the story began to move. Not with the noise of scandal, but with the quiet force of something real. Kavitha published her piece at dawn, and by lunchtime, it had crossed oceans. People everywhere, engineers, housekeepers, teachers, retired nurses, single mothers, read about Lakshmi and saw a reflection of someone they knew, someone forgotten, someone invisible. Media outlets picked it up. Some twisted it for drama, some for politics. But the core remained untouched, a story of resilience, debt, betrayal, and a reckoning long overdue. Mahad, sensing the noose, tightening, vanished, but not before one last move. A heavily edited video surfaced online, showing Sundar and Lakshmi speaking in the street, but cut in such a way that it looked like hush money was being offered. The internet has always had opinions. Some screamed betrayal. Others called it fake. A few said nothing, just shared the video with crying emojis and no context at all. ARU, furious, wanted to fight back. We released the original footage, he said. We show them the truth. But Sundar hesitated. Not yet, he said. It's sit. Let them wonder. Let them ask questions. And then we tell them everything. Not just what happened, but why it matters. Arun shook his head. They won't wait. The world moves fast, and we slow it down, Sundar said quietly. Just for a moment, it wasn't strategy. It was faith. And surprisingly, it worked. Within days, the narrative shifted again. People dug deeper, watched longer, read beyond the headlines, and slowly, sympathy turned to solidarity. It's not just for Sundar, but for Lakshmi. The hashtag dignity, DOESNT, expire, began trending in 3 countries. Schools used her story to teach students about the unseen heroes in their lives. A university in Kerala announced a scholarship in her name. But just as the dust began to settle, something unexpected happened. A lawyer arrived at Arun's door. He carried a sealed envelope and spoke with the kind of precision that made everyone in the room nervous. This is for Lakshmi, he said. From a man who recently passed away. They opened the envelope. Inside was a legal notice, not a threat, but a will. Mahad was dead. A heart attack, reportedly. But what he left behind was stranger than anything they could have imagined. Half of his property and all remaining financial assets had been transferred. 2 lakhs of no. Just a note. I destroyed too many lives. One of them was yours. Forgive me or don't. This is all I have left to offer. Lakshmi said nothing for a long time. Her face was unreadable. Finally, she handed the letter back to the lawyer. I don't want his money, she said, but I will take the land. Why? Sundar asked, puzzled. She looked at both of them with a soft fire in her eyes. Because we're going to build something on it. It's not for us. For the ones no one sees. Not the ones still sweeping floors at 85. And so it began. Plans were drawn. A community center for elderly workers, offering housing, meals, medical care, and something far rarer, respect. Funds poured in, not from pity, but from belief. Lakshmi didn't cut any ribbons on opening day. She just stood in the back, hands folded, watching as other forgotten women found their names again. As for Sundar, he returned to Silicon Valley eventually, but something had shifted in him. He no longer chased progress without memory. Speeches changed. His priorities changed. Even his silence changed. ARUN stayed in Chennai, running the center with quiet pride, and somewhere in a drawer. Kavitha kept the first notebook she ever used on the story. Not for clicks, not for awards, just to remind herself why stories matter. But just when they thought the past had finally gone quiet, one more envelope arrived, unsigned, unmarked. Inside it, a photograph of Lakshmi long ago, holding a baby that was not Sundar, not a hunt. The back of the photo had a message. Not all truths are finished yet. The unfinished truth, some stories don't end. It's not because the writer runs out of pages, but because the truth keeps walking after the credits roll. This story, Lakshmi's story, was supposed to be over. The debt had been paid, the wrongs exposed. The enemy's gone. A center had been built. Lives had been changed. Even the internet, so quick to rage and forget, had moved on. But then came the envelope. No return address, no message. Just a single photograph. Lakshmi. Too young to be holding a baby, and yet there she was, her smile strained. Eyes alert in that way only frightened people trying to appear brave can manage. And the baby wasn't Sundar. Wasn't our own either. This child was smaller, wrapped in a patterned cloth. There was something in the way Lakshmi held him, not gently, not maternally. More like someone who wasn't supposed to be holding him at all. On the back of the photo, not all truths are finished yet. And just like that, the calm began to ripple. For days, Sundar said nothing. He didn't ask Lakshmi. He didn't bring it up to Arun. The envelope sat in his briefcase next to quarterly reports and keynote drafts like a snake curled around a truth. Wasn't ready to share, but it aided him. Finally, he returned to Chennai unannounced. He found Lakshmi sitting alone, watching two stray dogs chase a tire down the street. She looked peaceful and older, as if the past few months had added years to her frame, but taken none from her spirit. He showed her the photo without speaking. She stared at it a long time, so long that he began to wonder if she recognized it at all. Then she whispered, "I was hoping this would never surface. Who is the child?" Sundar asked. Lakshmi closed her eyes, took a breath, like she was about to dive into cold water. "His name was Gopal," she said. "He wasn't mine. I was paid to keep him hidden. It's just for a week." But a week turned into months. The family disappeared. I was left holding a child who didn't belong to anyone anymore. What happened to him? "He gave him up," she said, voice cracking, "not to an orphanage. To someone I thought would keep him safe. A teacher. A kind man. But he moved cities, and we lost touch. I never knew what became of Gopal. I never told anyone, not even Arun. Not even your mother. Why did someone send this now?" She looked away. Maybe they want to remind me that even good intentions carry shadows. Sundar sat beside her, quiet. "Do you want to find him?" Lakshmi shook her head. "Not for me. I wouldn't recognize the man he's become. But maybe, if he's still out there, maybe he deserves to know he was loved, even in secret." Weeks passed. Gopal remained a ghost. Then one day a man arrived at the community center. He was calm, well-dressed, maybe 40. Book of poetry under one arm and a quiet sadness under the other. He asked for Lakshmi. Said he'd received a letter, unsigned, with a photo, and a sentence, "Ask her about the lion statue." And just like that, the last thread of the past tugged itself free. But this isn't a story about neat endings. It's about what happens when the truth is no longer hidden under floorboards or wrapped in silence. It's about what's left behind when forgiveness is given. But memory remains. Lakshmi never told Sundar if the man truly was Gopal. Maybe she didn't want to know for sure. Maybe it was enough just to see his face and whisper, "I'm sorry. One last time." Arun didn't ask. He said some doors should stay half-closed, enough to let the light in, but not the storm. Sundar returned to Silicon Valley, but not unchanged. His work became quieter, more focused on people than platforms. He never mentioned Lakshmi in speeches again, not because he forgot her, but because some stories are too sacred for sound bites. And the ledger? It rests in a glass case inside the center, next to a photo of Lakshmi smiling with both Sundar and Arun. Underneath, a plaque reads, "For those who were never thanked." Because in the end, this story wasn't about a tech billionaire, or a lost child, or even a corrupt man finally brought down. This was about a woman. The world never noticed until it had no choice but to listen. And somewhere, in a dusty drawer or a stranger's hand, another photo waits. Because not all truths are finished yet. The end.